and British citizen Carl Gary Singleton has today been charged for the murder of his Kenyan girlfriend, 22-year-old Peris Ashley Agumbi. 41-year-old Singleton, however, denied murdering Agumbi before Justice Rosalind Korir at the Nairobi High Court.
In November 2014, tragedy unfolded inside a quiet gated apartment complex in Kiamu County, Kenya. A young woman's life, marked by ambition and struggle, ended suddenly after days of turmoil. Her name was Peris Ashley Agumbi. She was only 22 years old, a student at the University of Nairobi. Peris' story is one of love, conflict, illness, and ultimately death. It became the center of a high-profile court case with her British boyfriend, Carl Singleton, accused of murder. But what really happened inside Neptune's apartment in Gachie, and why did the court ultimately set him free? Dark Echoes 254. In recent years, online dating has surged to become one of the most common ways for men and women to connect. What began as a trend in Western countries has quickly taken root in Africa, with Kenya proving no exception. Today, social media dominates our social lives. Platforms like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat not only help us keep in touch with friends but have also become avenues for romance. Many people proudly say they found love online, yet, alongside these success stories lies a growing number of cautionary tales. For some, the same platform that promises companionship has instead delivered heartbreak, disappointment, and even danger. One such case was that of Peris Ashley Agumbi, a young Kenyan woman who fell in love with Carl Singleton, a British national she met online. Their romance blossomed through the screens, fueled by long-distance promises and the hope of a better future. Eventually, Singleton travels to Kenya and the two decided to meet in person. Peris Ashley Agumbi was a 22-year-old who was studying on Lower Kabete campus at the University of Nairobi and was to graduate the same week that she was laid to rest, balancing her studies with the challenges of living with chronic illnesses. She had diabetes and hypertension, both conditions requiring strict medication and careful daily management. Her friends and family describe her as lively, hopeful, and determined to live a normal life despite her health struggles. Carl Singleton, a 6'6" 20-stone former van driver who comes from northwestern England from Milan, Cumbria region, met Agumbi 2 years earlier on Facebook before flying out with a tourist visa to Kenya to meet up. He had been living with Miss Agumbi in the Neptune Apartment, 4th floor. Their stay was not smooth sailing. Neighbors said that Carl had anger issues and would lash out at Ashley at any given time. Their relationship was seen as complicated, with reports of disagreements, fights, and what some neighbors describe as stormy atmosphere inside the apartment. Even flushing a toilet, to him it was too loud. On the evening of November 19th, the couple's private dispute spilled into the open. Neighbors of Neptune Apartment later told police that they heard shouting from Carl and Peris units. One of them, Evelyn Musila, recalled hearing a man's voice yell the word out. Moments later, Peris appeared at the apartment's gates. She looked frail, distressed, and frightened. Evelyn would later testify that Peris told her she had been assaulted. She claimed Carl had grabbed her by the neck and thrown her out of the house. Evelyn noticed swelling around her neck and bruising that seemed consistent with her accounts. But Peris was desperate to go back inside. She pleaded with Evelyn and others, saying she needed her medication. Diabetes and hypertension can quickly spiral into life-threatening conditions without treatment. From where they stood, the neighbors saw Carl throwing items out of the house, tossing belongings into the compound's dumping site. It was an alarming scene. That same night, Peris went to the police station. She reported that Carl had attacked her, damaged her belongings, and destroyed her medication by flushing it down the toilet. This was a critical detail because without those drugs, her health was at a serious risk. The police issued her with hospital referral note, a standard procedure for assault victims needing immediate treatment. The next day, on November 20th, Peris returned to the station with a treatment card. The police then issued her with a P3 medical examination form, another important step in cases of alleged assaults. Peris also added another disturbing claim. When she re-entered the apartment with the help of the caretaker, she found some of her medication cut into pieces with scissors. Her story painted a picture of escalating violence, control and destruction of life-saving medication. By November 21st, Peris' condition worsened. She reached out to her mother, Ida Agumbi, who was attending a funeral in Nyanza at the time. Using her friend Camilta Nabuire's phone, Peris told her mother she was unwell and in urgent need of help. Ida immediately sent 1,000 shillings and advised that Peri be taken to Aga Khan Hospital in Nairobi. There, Dr. Charles Maina attended to her. Peris arrived with severe symptoms: abdominal pain, vomiting, diarrhea, headaches, shortness of breath, dehydration, and dangerously high blood pressure and blood sugar. Tests revealed she was in metabolic acidosis, a life-threatening condition often caused by uncontrolled diabetes. Doctors recommended admission into the high dependency units, but the costs were high and the family couldn't afford to keep her there, so she was transferred first to Avenue Hospital and later to Ladnan Hospital on Thika Road. At Ladnan, Peris was admitted into the high dependency units. She was placed on oxygen, intravenous fluids, and insulin. Despite intervention care, her condition did not improve. On November 22, 2014, Peris Ashley Agumbi died. The post-mortem report listed the cause of death as complications related to uncontrolled diabetes. For her grieving family, the medical explanation only told part of the story. To them, Carl Singleton bore responsibility. They believed that by assaulting Peris and destroying her medication, he had denied her the treatment that could have saved her life.
Carl Gary Singleton is a troubled man. The backstory of his case begins on November 19th last year. Peris Ashley Agumbi's 22-year-old girlfriend died of diabetic hypertension and respiratory failure. Singleton is accused of causing her death.
The police agreed, at least at first. On November 23, 2014, Carl Singleton was arrested and charged with murder. Prosecutors argued that he had been abusive, controlling, and that his actions had directly led to Peris' death. Singleton spent 11 days in a Nairobi jail cell before making his first court appearance before Magistrate Hannah Kaguru on Wednesday, December 3rd. Recalling the experience, he said, "I was just shocked at first when I was arrested. I was in jail for 11 days. That was hell. I had to sleep on the floor with just one drink a day and one meal a day." On Tuesday, he was released on a cash bail of 1 million. The court required him to provide 2 Kenyan sureties as guarantors. Justice Roslyn Korir also ordered him to deposit his passports with the court and to report monthly to the Deputy Registrar of the High Court. In his bail plea, Singleton argued that he needed to return to Britain for medical treatment. While prosecutors had initially opposed his release, citing him as a flight risk, the judge noted their softened stance. She emphasized that bail is a constitutional right. Ms. Agumbi's death and Singleton's arrest came only days after he had messaged his younger brother, Stephen, 21, on Facebook. In that message, Singleton said he had extended his trip by 6 months and that he would be home by February. Back in England, his family struggled to process the news. His mother described him as kind-hearted and shy. She said, "He's a quiet man. I think the size of him frightens people because he's very tall. To look at him, you'd think he was really robust, but deep down he's quiet, soft and shy. He's quiet and has always kept to himself." His father, Norman, 66, remembered the moment he found out. He had been out walking the family dog, Josie, when the phone rang. "She rang me and she was in a mess. I was absolutely speechless," he recalled. The family said Singleton had seemed cheerful just weeks earlier. They had spoken with him over Skype on October, where he laughed and chatted with them. He said he was having a great time, his father recalled. Since his arrest, however, the family said they had not been able to speak to him. The Foreign Office confirmed, "We can confirm the arrest of British national in Kenya on November 23rd. We are providing consular assistance." Witnesses lined up against him. Inspector Luchacha, who recorded Peris' statements, confirmed her allegations. Neighbors described her desperate cries for help and her claims that Carl had thrown her out and destroyed her medicine. Her mother spoke of her daughter's frantic call for help in her final days. It looked on surface like a strong case. But once the trial began, cracks appeared in the prosecution's case. The defense argued that much of the evidence relied on what Peris herself had said before her death. These were treated as dying declarations, powerful in law but impossible to cross-examine. They highlighted contradictions. At one point, Peris said her medicine was inside the apartment. At another, she said it had been flushed away. Later, she said it had been cut into pieces. The timeline of events were messy and the police documentation had gaps. Doctors also admitted under cross-examination that Peris' medical condition was complicated. She had diabetes, hypertension, and thyroid disease. While denial of medicine could certainly worsen her state, no doctor could conclusively link Carl's actions to her death. The defense insisted that while the relationship might have been troubled, there was no proof beyond reasonable doubt that Carl Singleton had caused her death. In 2017, the High Court delivered its ruling. The judge acknowledged the tragedy of Peris' death but ruled that the evidence did not meet the threshold required for a murder conviction. Carl Singleton was acquitted and walked free. The ruling left Peris' family devastated. To them, her last words, her pleas for help, and the neighbors' testimonies were more than enough to prove responsibility. But in the courtroom, contradiction and lack of medical certainty overshadowed their grief. The case of Peris Ashley raised broader questions. How should the justice system handle situations where abuse and illness collide? Can the destruction of medication be seen as a direct act of violence leading to death? Or is it too difficult to prove coercion in such cases? It also highlights the vulnerability of young people living with chronic illnesses, especially in turbulent relationships. For Peris, a young woman balancing her education, her health, and her relationship, the events of that November spiraled out of control in just few days. Her death was not just medical tragedy, but a legal and emotional one that continues to haunt those who knew her. In the end, the story of Peris Ashley Agumbi reminds us that behind every courtroom life, every piece of testimony is a human life cut short. A daughter, a student, a young woman who should have had a future. And while Carl Singleton walks free, the question around what really happened inside Neptune's apartment on that November night remained unanswered.